Welcome back to another amazing video. This time we're going to be reviewing how to export fur from Blender into Unreal Engine, and for that we're going to use this toon character. He's a blue-footed booby. He's found in most of the coasts in the Pacific Ocean. And here we have a simplified version just using the meta rig. So this is the add-on that we are going to be using. It's called Groom Exporter, and it was created for a previous version of Blender. Although you can see that I'm using this in Blender 4.3, and these are the important attributes that you can feed once you create an empty fur and then, start grooming your actual assets, as you can see right here, using geometry nodes. And all of these properties are going to be later exported to Unreal Engine. You can see that this is the general workflow. Don't worry, we're going to go about this in just a moment. But here you can see that I'm adjusting either manually or by using the presets included in every Blender ship program. And you can adjust the first, and once you do that, you can export that into Unreal Engine. So here is the relationship of the footage that you may probably need to take a look at based on the fur adjustments and the fur length. This is a close-up for this bird. Of course, our version is a little bit tuned, but this is a good enough model to take it into Unreal Engine. You can see here is the curves that we've created to create hair here in Blender, and all of the attributes, you can read them in the properties. Make sure you have the Groom Exporter add-on from Gumroad. This is the name of this, and as you can see, the author created it so that you can simplify your exporting workflow. It will export as an ABC, an Alembic file, using the attributes you create. So this is how it works. The first thing that you want to check is that you have a UV, unwrapped UV texture. Fill the attributes for color, roughness, and radius. Radius is the width, as you can see right there, and then you just click export. You target your directory. You do not need to do anything else. I'm going to just copy this URL, the path direction, and after you export the Alembic hairs, then you need to export the FBX file of the model itself. So that way you can come into Unreal Engine, open the FBX, just leave everything as it is, because right now we only have a simple armature like the meta rig. You can see right there, this is the still assets, and later we're going to also right click import, and then we're going to target the ABC file. And once you have that, you can see right there it's valid for some of the attributes, and then just click import, and you're going to bring in the Alembic file. You can see this special icon of this hair strands. If you double click it, we're going to open it, all of the properties, and the one that we are interested in is this one right here to define the width. So use 0.1 because that's like the finest hair strand width that you can use. Next, we're going to create a blueprint, and this is just to join or put together our FBX plus the groom file that we just brought in from Alembic. So you come here into add skeletal mesh, target your blue-footed booby character. In this case, this is just a simple animal, but we're going to work with a human later, and this is how we see it. Now you compile and save. Let's close this window, come back into your asset groom, right there, right click, and create a binding. This is important because we're going to target our mesh, in this case, our blue-footed booby character. And just like that, you can just make sure that your skeletal mesh is binded into the asset groom. Alright, so now if you double click here, you're going to notice that you have the character, but we need to add the groom. So press add, select groom, type the name to identify this in the entire project, And if you go back here into the assets, you're going to be able to pick your groom. So that's important. Now you need to pick the binding. And lastly, you're going to see that your character has your hair strands, hair curves. But there's one important thing here. Before we do that, to use this character, notice how the hair is not following the mesh. So don't just twist the mesh and then twist the or rotate the hair curves. No, what you want to do is to make this child of the character. So just drag and drop it into the skeletal mesh so that it can be correctly parented. And that way you have your character bound with your hair groom, as you can see right here. So that's the correct method. You need to make it a child of. All right, so save, compile, and now we're going to create a new material, because after creating the hair binding, you need to define it or shade it. And select the material, select hair, and you can type here hair because you're going to notify the material that you're going to use this for hair purposes. Then click hair, and you can add these hair attributes, which is basically like when you have in Blender your attributes for curves, you also have it here in Unreal Engine. So just connect this to the base color, and don't worry, you will not see anything here, but it will be apparent in the Unreal Engine. So just remember, here in Blender we also have properties to read from the material curves, and Unreal Engine has that natively in this hair shader. So connect that to the base color, and now if you double click here, you need to reassign that material. So we just created this hair material. Assign it, just select it from the list. Let's scroll up, and I can see it right here. So now it's been selected. Again, don't forget to make it a child of. This was recorded ahead of time. So compile and save. And now if we drag and drop this blueprint, which again, it's like the Unity prefab, you can see that our character has hair. So that's it. That's the entire thing. Now we want to refine the hair. So what do? We come here into the material, because we need to make sure that the material that we created is also assigned into the groom asset itself. So that way you can see it. And I can read right there. It's all white, just like the texture that we used in Blender. And now I'm going to switch into the width of the curve. As you can see right here, it's full 1 unit, and it's clearly more visible. Now, if you want to activate physics, you can come into the physics tab, and once you activate it, everything will be calculated so that whenever you make modifications to it, it's going to react with physics, like wind, like movement, animation. By the way, the Groom exporter does not export animation. So this is just to take the hair from Blender into Unreal the way you wanted it. Now, Mr. Schiller, why does my bird look weird? Well, that is because we have not assigned a proper collider, and the collider is making explode all of the hair curves that we had. Next, don't forget that this is the correct connection, the most simple connection, so that your UV texture is recognized into the characters. You come out of the root UV, connected to the UVs, and then to the base color. Save and apply. And if you go back to your character, now you can see correctly that your texture is displayed on the hair groom, on the hair curves. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to switch off physics. So this is the walkthrough, the general walkthrough for this complete process, and that's how you get hair into Unreal Engine. From there, you can simulate, do physics, anything else you'd like. So here's a quick recap of what that rigging process for the bird took. And this is the default Rigify rig bird. As you can see, it's not really difficult. This bird has been around for, I think, 20 or so years in my hard drive. I decided to remake it in Blender and rig it. Because previously in the past, rigging a complete bird was such a pain, but now Rigify control rigs make it so easy. Now, please, this is the default Rigify rig for birds. This is not game ready to export. right now, at the moment, rig to U5 only works with human rigs, not animals, by the way. Anyways, let's continue with the process. Next, I, painted the weights. As you can see right here, I defined the head mask because that's the area where I want to unwrap the UV. It is important for you to unwrap the UV area where you're going to paint your hairs, where you're going to create your fur. It requires that, otherwise it will not work. So anyways, this is a quick time lapse. As you can see, it was kind of difficult, but in the end we got it to work. And here is a little setup of how I'm using vertex colors. So I'm masking out all of the areas where I do not want the hair feathers to appear, because I want to use a bump. This way we can create the body feathers, just like a little bump. And we can also move some parameters around, bring the roughness all the way up because we don't want, shiny feathers. And it's just a little pattern for disruption here. Okay, so let's start with the hair curves grooming for this character. Select the character. In this case, I'm going to Shift A in the viewport, empty hair in the curves menu. And with that, you should have a curve created with its attributes. We're going to add another attribute for radius and color because those attributes are required for Hair Groom Exporter. Okay, you can fill them beforehand, so every time that you export, they are automatically filled. However, I'm going to manually pick them here, and I'm also going to create the roughness attribute so that you can see when you come back here, all of those attributes are also listed here. So I'm selecting color, roughness, and radius. That's the right order every time you're going to do this. And don't forget, you need to also select your UV map. Because we do not have a material, the UV map will not appear right now, but later on when you reassign, because every time you do this you need to reassign, so make sure you do this at the end of your process. So with the curve selected, I'm going to go into sculpt mode. I'm going to set the count to 1, and now I'm going to click on the x-axis to do symmetry on X. So this is the way you start. Okay, we're going to start with just one curve, and down here you have the new brushes. Well, they are not actually new. This is the place where brushes live now. And all of these tools are also available from the top menu and also the shift spacebar shortcut. Anyway, so let's go, and you can see all of the brushes are also available here. And I'm going to be using the one for grow. And let's reduce this by pressing Control, by the way. So that way it will be shorter. And then I'm going to select comb. And this is how I do the grooming. So first start, let's do this again with all of these guys. One more time here. And now I'm going to grab the grow. I'm going to use Control. I'm going to reduce the size. I'm going to switch back into the reference so I can see how long the hair strands are for this character. Of course, this is a toon character. Then I'm going to comb this all the way back. Mr. Schiller, does the hair strand crosses the border of the scalp? Yes, it will. It is not automatically done like they used to have it on the particle hair. But in your case, you need to be very careful as to how much you push your comb into the surface. So that's why I'm playing it safe here, and I'm not combing or grooming this too much at the back of the hair. Otherwise, it will penetrate the mesh and it will look bad. So, just be mindful that the zoom level of your tool in this viewport will also affect. So shift the spacebar will also invoke it right there in the viewport, as you can see. So I'm zooming out all the way out so that I can have more area in regards of the tool fall off radius. So this is important. Just like a sculpting, you would want to zoom in when you want details and zoom out when you want the overall general shape. So once we have that, we are going to switch to another different thing. We're going to select interpolation for the length, the shape, and the count is going to be around 10 units, or rather 10 hair curves. So now if you press this and you start to, paint over the head area, you're going to see automatic filling for the area that you're painting. And don't forget, it is very important you switch to strip and activate at least 1 or 2 subdivisions so that your actual hair curves are displayed a little bit softer. They are not hard. Use the subdivisions for the viewport in this case first. Now let's switch to the geometry nodes part of this thing, because you can do this hairstyle with geometry nodes. And you can see that we already have one here for surface deform. And now that we have added our material, you can come here into Groom root UV, and sure enough, surface UV coordinates are already available. Now I'm going to pick color, roughness, and radius. And if you leave this just like this, it will work. You can export the Alembic file with the curves and it will work. But we want to stylize it, or we want to give it some shape. And the first thing we want to do is to adjust the radius. So I'm going to be using set curve radius, but the problem with that is that it's not reading, appropriately. And so we want to use a spline parameter to induce the factor, meaning we want to shape that, hair groom. We want to shape that hair curve. So we're going to use a float curve, which basically means we're going to start at this point and then we're going to finish at this point. I'm going to give it some stylization. However, I see that the radius needs to be very small, while the float curve has a lot of radius, and I cannot go under that. So I'm going to use a map range, which basically adjusts the numbers to the desired length or desired radius that we want. And we saw that it was 0.005. And now I get my strands just the way I need them. They are still too thick and also over the surface, so we're going to need to adjust some of these values over here. All right, and that's how you do it manually. Now, if you want to work with the presets that Blender gave you, you can just go into the asset browser, go into the hair category, and here you will see different components, different geometry nodes that you can also customize. So instead of doing everything I did before, I could just drag and drop this directly into the hair, and now you can see that it will have different parameters over here that you can use to adjust the curve, as I was doing before, except that this time, it's just a preset. So you can use the presets given from Blender to you. As you can see, this is the geometry nodes 3, or you can use my previous method. Although, if you use the geometry nodes provided by Blender, your hair grooming will look much better. Anyway, so let's continue, and now that we understand how these things work, I'm going to keep on working with the presets for the geometry nodes to groom the hair. So I'm adding layers here. So now you need to decide how you're going to groom this. And one thing I don't hear enough people to talk about is the way that you create the groom. It's layered, and therefore you need to start from the back to the front. So that way you don't cover your frontal feathers first and then your back feathers later. No, since it's been created from the back, the top layers are going to overlay nicely. Next, I'm going to switch to my comb brush. Again, I'm going to have my strength a little bit low. And you can see right here, it's selected from the tools. So I'm trying to do this super nice. You can press Shift while you do that. That will soften the way the curve is manipulated. If you press Shift and Spacebar, you will get the floating toolbar to switch your brushes, and you can continue your work. This is especially important if you're working in a stylus-based screen. So here I'm using more strands. Fast forwarding this process because you can see where I'm going with this. Okay, we finished the entire head. And now I'm going to drag and drop directly into the curves. The preset that I see right here, which is the hair curves clump. And this is exactly what we had in the hair particles, except that this time you can drive these different parameters to adjust the randomness, to adjust the clumpiness. Now, if you can watch the initial video for this blue-footed booby, you will see that the hair strands are thick and clumped, so that you need to define on your own. I'm just walking you through the entire process here so that you can define how your bird wants to look. If it's a crazy bird, maybe you want the hair curves to expand. Everything goes with the attitude or the character itself, what you want to reflect. So here you can make the curve thicker. This is the previous preset that we used. I think this kind of works. And you can also define how you want the hair length to be shaded. All of the attributes in the curve can be read from Blender into Unreal Engine, or Sanda is what I meant. So here you have different choices. You can try all of them if you want. The stacking order in the geometry nodes modifier has a different effect, so you can try them all in different orders. So this is our project. I hope you have liked this video, and you can type any kind of questions you have in the comment section down below. You can port your basic hair groom from Blender into Unreal Engine. My name is Pierre Schiller, VFX and 3D animator, and if you like this video, please don't forget to follow and subscribe. Thank you very much.